Hello everyone, today I bring to you a fantastic game played between Magnus Carlsen and Sipke Ernest when Magnus was only 13 years old. And we were specially focused here on the epaulette checkmate. That uh, is a really beautiful looking checkmate. An epaulette, as you know, is an insignia you can have on two sides of your shoulders if you have a military uniform. So the final look in the game, look for it at the end of what an epaulette checkmate looks like, courtesy a la Magnus Carlsen at 13 years old. I believe he got his first GM norm in this tournament. And look how deep thinking his skills were at such a young age. And today, 2021, guess who is the world reigning champion? It is none other than Magnus Carlsen at 30 years old. He has kept this title for quite a while. And in order to get a GM norm, you have to win 3 tournaments. The score has to be 6.5 games out of 9 at least. So that's a pretty tall order. Again, he was able to do this first norm at 13 years old and obviously 2 more later on. And here we go. This is how he started with e4. He started with e4. Obviously he's white, Magnus Carlsen, and Sipke Ernest earned his GM norms a couple years later. And then we go with c6. That is considered what's called the Caro-Kann defense. When you're talking about black defense, it's just like defense, you're defending, so this is for black. And openings are whoever moves first, and since in chess we have white moving first, that will be referring to white. So when you hear defense, it is referring to the black pieces, and openings refer to the white pieces. So here we go. It's the Caro-Kann defense with c6. So Magnus moves up with d4, d5. Okay. Let's see what happens here. You know, there are different lines and variations. I'm not going to go into that today. We are reviewing more what the epaulette checkmate looks like. Okay, so he puts some pressure on the d-pawn with his knight moving to c3. Ernest decides to take, and Magnus also takes. As you can see, he's quite open here. Very open board, lots of mobility in these types of games where you have open squares to move in. So your bishops are going to be kind of critical, and so will your rooks in such games. All right, we continue. Ernest goes on the attack, attacking the knight. What will Magnus do? He moves back out of the way. And at the same time, he's looking a little like a twisted move here. I call them twisted moves because you twist around and suddenly you are the attacker. See how he was being attacked with his knight, but by going to g3 with his knight, now he's attacking the bishop. And so he moves back with his bishop. Magnus is relentless. He seems to want to corner this bishop, the black bishop on the white squares. So you see Ernest moving up his, kind of feeling his way out of what Magnus wants to do. And just moving his h-pawn to h6. He starts to develop his other knight. There's always a plan with Magnus. And you can see it at 13 years old. So he moves the queen. And can you see he's still attacking this poor bishop? This poor black bishop is continued to be attacked. And it's protected by the knight. So what will he do? He continues to retreat. Doesn't feel good. You can tell just by the moves who's moving forward and who's retreating. Yes, that's a psychological component here. Somebody's really like pushing more force, and it looks like the white pieces so thus far are the ones that are aggressive here. Okay, so now he offers the bishop exchange. He wants to get rid of this bishop for sure. He spent the last few moves, what Magnus did, in controlling the movement of this bishop. He finally takes, and then Magnus takes with his queen. So finally that stress is over, that tension is over. We continue with a new, almost like a new beginning, a new focus here. And they both develop their pieces. Now the knight, notice you want to like take the spots that are not being attacked, but you are now covering. Look how many spots we are covering. Okay, the maneuvering now begins. It's the middle game. Okay, we have a castle by Magnus. This poor bishop is kind of constricted. There's really no place for him to go, but he kind of needs to still develop. This is probably the safest square for them. Then we have the knight moving out. It's not afraid of being in the spot with the black knight taking it if he wants to. Would that be an exchange? What do you think? Just because the pieces have equal weight numbers doesn't mean in a certain game, according to the pieces and position of it, it's never really the case according to what the plan that you have is. What is the plan? And are you the other person is going to be able to do a counter offer type of plan? Whose plan is going to win out? Let's see. Okay, so now we have him, Ernest, eyeing a weakness. According to your mind, you have to find weaknesses, and this a pawn is not protected. It is weak, so he found a way to try to get to Carlsen, but never fear. Carlsen's king is here, and he moves it to b2 to protect himself here, just in case the black queen goes on the attack on the a file. Very nice prophylactic move. Prophylactic moves means you are trying to think ahead and protect certain pieces and squares before the other person strikes and makes things just fall apart. So he's trying to keep it all together by moving that king to b2. Alright, so now we have another castle. So it was a short castle for Ernest, and it was a long castle for Magnus. So they're on the kings are on the opposite sides. There's strategies too that you have to think of when the kings are on the opposite sides of each other in the game after castling. Okay, he is continuing on the attack. Relentless Magnus is a 13-year-old, like going after it. I really want that GM norm, he's thinking. Okay, the knights are now taken. Knight with knight. But he was managed to do a little bit more. Because he managed to do a check. Now, was it just a fake check? What did the fake check mean? Was just checking for checking purposes? You don't want to just check for checking purposes. You want to have something kind of a plan. What are the best moves? Not just to check, check, check. But I think in this case, it might be fruitful for Magnus, because look how constricted black pieces are. They're just suffocating amongst themselves. That's a clue to what might happen in the future. Alright, he moves in with his knight. Again, relentless. Protecting the pawn on h file by doing this move. And the knight is being protected by the pawn on a d4 and the bishop on f4. Okay, he moves into an open file. Magnus steps out of the fire there. So he continues to attack. Magnus ignores that attack. That's another thing, to ignore certain attacks because you have a better plan in mind. You don't waste time taking a pawn. And that pawn would not have been protected anyway, so he instead moves to g6. He takes. There's now a hole there. Anytime a pawn leaves a square, it becomes a weaker square. And now we see how weak it is. He moved out of the way, so at this point, that was kind of like a, come on, kitty, come and catch it. Catch it like a trap. And he had no choice, basically. He had to do something, so a forced move, a kind of forced exchange there before this. We have another check. Almost feels like the end is near, but you still have to maneuver amongst all these pieces. You still have to know how to make that checkmate. Okay, he moves out of the way. He continues to expand on the attack. He continues. It doesn't matter, the bishop is gone. What would you do here? Pause and think. What would you do? He decides to take and check with the rook on h and goes to h6, taking. Let's see, let's look at this move. Right there, takes the pawn, even though now it's attacked by the knight, and he takes it. He finally takes the bishop, and he's trying to protect the black pieces, trying to protect the rook, but to no avail. He is so close. Look at how close this is to wonderful, to a promoted pawn. Wonderful study in theory here for endgames. Okay, he goes out with his king. Look at the luft for the knight. The knight is coming nicely along. He has time to move the knight in a safe manner. So Ernest also moves out his knight, trying to prepare for this attack, because he knows an attack is coming on his king. So this is trying to prepare so that his king would not be naked. So there's the attack. He knew this was coming, but the maneuvering skills of Magnus at 13 years old are just spectacular. Okay, so he doesn't take with the rook to lose. He doesn't want to lose the rook here, so he checks with his queen. He now gets rid of this pesky knight that could have, I mean, a pesky pawn, white pawn that could have been almost promoted. We have another check. He tries to move in to protect, and this is the clincher. Look at this beautiful move. The g file is controlled by the rook on g3. So now look at the control of his pieces here and the coordination. Look at this beautiful epaulette checkmate. Do you see why it's an epaulette? Look what the rooks are, like the shoulders of a military uniform, kind of sideways, you know. But that's what an epaulette checkmate looks like, and this was done courtesy Magnus Carlsen, and at the age of a tender young age of 13. And today, still in 2021, he is the reigning world chess champion. And hopefully you can support the chess. He's supporting chess worldwide. He's done a lot for chess, and he's alive to be here and teaching you how to play chess by just the way he has continued to evolve, including the engines now. He's obviously has a whole team and kept current, but it's a lot of skill to keep that type of level of intensity for such a long period. Basically, all of his life has been dedicated to chess. And here we go, a 13-year-old Magnus Carlsen showing us what an epaulette checkmate looks like. You all take care. Au revoir.